That little item is one of 20 moody bagatelles collectively titled Vision Fugitif, and it was authored by one of the new musical voices, new that is to the second decade of the 20th century, Sergei Prokofieff. Prokofieff's most consequential works are written in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. He died in 1953. But ironically, his most frequently played composition was composed at almost exactly the same time as Vision Fugitif, and it, of course, is called the Classical Symphony. On the surface, the two pieces would seem to have very little to say to each other. It's difficult, really, to accept the fact that they were written by the same man and at more or less the same time. The Classical Symphony is a neat, angular, witty takeoff of, as the title suggests, the Classical Symphony. And it also contains some of the most memorably jaunty tunes Prokofieff ever put on paper. But Vision Fugitif, on the other hand, is a languid, quasi-mystical opus with no memorable tunes to speak of, and with no small debt to the atmospheric wool-gathering of Prokofieff's compatriot and predecessor, Alexander Scriabin. But ironically again, and despite its anticipatable harmony and predictable rhythm, it's the Classical Symphony that looks forward to the 1920s, forward to a decade of musical reconstruction in which most composers of Prokofieff's generation placed a premium on clarity of form, whereas Vision Fugitif is very much of its time, a time in which, though most music was still capable of being analyzed according to the principles of key signature tonality, this could really only be done if one were willing to apply a formula consisting of 1 part triad testing and 2 parts wishful thinking. The piece that I played, for example, actually consists of only 2 chords, which is 1 less than most of the greatest hits from the Grand Ole Opry. The first chord is built on this unit, which keeps getting repeated by the left hand, and it's variously permutated as or as the second chord also has to do with a repeated figure in the left hand, an ostinato. And it gets adorned in this fashion. Now, there are 2 ways in which you can analyze chord progressions like that, chords in music in which a composer like Prokofieff is hanging on for dear life to the last remnants of the tonal system. One way is what I guess the theologians would call the phenomenological approach. This is a chord, more or less dissonant, accepted on its own terms. The other way is to take chords like that and say, well, you know, give or take a few accidentals, those chords really do resemble the dominant and the tonic of C major. Maybe the piece really was in C major all along, and everything that happened in some way can be traced back to roots with which you're all very familiar. Well, the beauty of that second system is that it has a kind of built-in memory bank capacity. It turns the past into a continuo for the present in a way. It allows for the assumption that certain phenomena can be experienced, can be felt without actually being heard or played. It's a subtler system altogether, really, I think. Very much of a piece with the psychoanalytic straw clutching that influenced the post-romantic movement. And as such, it gives real musical substance to a rather nebulous title like Vision Fugitif, and makes it possible to maintain a remembrance of things past while speculating upon the inventions of the present. Which brings us to one man who was singularly uninvolved with zeitgeist politics, Richard Strauss. Strauss was almost totally devoid of interest in what his colleagues were up to. He remained sublimely indifferent to musical fashion. He was totally unmoved by the need to reflect the spirit of the times in his music, entirely disinterested in the harmonic experiments of Schoenberg or the rhythmic experiments of Stravinsky. And yet, Strauss did change in a way, but in a way that was entirely consonant with his persona, entirely devoid of any coercion from colleagues like Schoenberg or Stravinsky. And some of the best evidence we have for his quiet metamorphosis is contained in his 3 songs for Ophelia, Opus 67, songs in which Strauss turns into German, the text from Shakespeare, of course. Strauss said once that there was no human mood for which he could not find a musical equivalent. And as far as we know, Richard Strauss did not win any medals for modesty. But with the Ophelia song, Strauss takes on a subject that challenges even his apparently limitless facility for musical characterization, schizophrenia. And on the evidence of this short cycle, with its deliberately inconclusive tonal bias in the first song and its manic depressive modulatory plan in the last one, I think we have to take him at his word. Roxolana Roslak is going to sing the 3 songs for Ophelia by Richard Strauss.
Treulieb vor andern an die Muschel Hut und Stab und den Sandalschuh. Ist tot und lange hin, tot und hin, Fräulein, in so häupten grünes Gras, ihm zu Fuß ein Stein, auf seinem Bahrtuch weiß wie Schnee. Viel lieber Blumentrauer, sie gehen zu Grabe, nass. Guten Morgen, es ist Sankt, Valentinstag, so viel von Sonnenschein, ich junger Weib, am Fenster schlage, will euer Valentin sein. Der junge Mann tut Hosen an, geht auf die Kommode, ließ ein die Maid, die als Maid ging nimmer mehr herfür. Bei Sankt Niklas und Caritas ein unverschämt Geschlecht. Ein junger Mann tut's, wenn kann, für wahr, das ist nicht recht. Sie sprach, geschürzt mit mir, versprach dir mich zu freuen. Ich brech's auch nicht beim Sonnenlicht, wirst du nicht kommen herein. grau.